Hello Horror Hounds. As promised in our last video, we're going to take a pause on our film by film look at David Cronenberg's career and explore a strange cul-de-sac, possibly one of the most unlikely franchises in horror sci-fi film history. 10 years after David Cronenberg's Scanners, we're going to look at the first of four sequels, 1991's Scanners 2, The New Order. Scanners 2 and 3 were both written by B.J. Nelson, a lot of other cooks at the pot for Scanners 3, the writing pot, but both directed by Christian Duguay. So, in 1988, the Canadian tax shelter years for films was well and truly over. So, the next best thing to a surefire moneymaker was, I guess, what they turned to next. And that, my friends, as we all know, say it together, 1, 2, 3, sequels. You can imagine producers ranging around for whatever intellectual property they have. And David Cronenberg's Scanners, certainly, let's be honest, of the films he'd made up to that point, Shivers, Rabid, The Brood, Scanners. Scanners is the first one that does actually sort of scream franchise potential, and so that potential was grasped with both hands. The plot of Scanners 2 involves a crooked police commissioner who schemes to gain control of a major unnamed city in a sort of nod to the work of Cronenberg. It's sort of any city, USA stroke Canada, at any time, the present, the near future. It's all a bit of a grey area. Anyway, he's a wrong 'un, and what he does is he manipulates scanners to help bring about his vision of a new order. Many established franchises were resurrected with sort of unnecessary and sometimes only tangentially associated sequels in this period. You can think of the Prom Night films 3 and 4, Extro 2, The Gate 2, Witchboard 3, among others. Scanners 2 is certainly part of that family. Low-budget quasi-sequels utilizing known properties that are at best loosely alluded to in this sort of straight-to-cable feeling type of movie. That doesn't mean to say that there's not fun to be had here, because there absolutely is. But it is fair to say that the subtler themes of Cronenberg's Scanners are not mined for further potential. If there's any sort of message to Scanners 2, it's the bewilderingly original notion that, hey, drugs are bad, kids. The end game in Sequel Town, and make no mistake, we are firmly entrenched in Sequel Town here, is the bottom line, the almighty dollar. So the takeaway from Cronenberg's film is going to be telepathic fights and exploding heads. That's what the kids want to see. With that kind of lowest common denominator mentality, the best one can hope for is to be entertained. And barring a second act section which slows to a crawl, presumably to save a goodly portion of the budget for an effects-driven final showdown, Scanners 2 is entertaining. This review benefits from me already having watched Scanners 3, which makes Scanners 2 look like Scanners 1. One of the things Cronenberg likes to do, it's part of his approach, part of his aesthetic, is to not necessarily name the places his movies are set in. Some of them are clearly Canadian infused. Some of them are filmed in Canada but made to maybe look like any town USA. The when as well, they're never really pinned down, I guess, to specific times. Are they quasi-futuristic? Are they sort of a now? Are they a sort of J.G. Ballard, 10 seconds into your future type affair? Yes to all of those. So one of the things that the makers of the Scanners sequels will struggle to do is to decide how tied into the original they're going to be, and if they are going to be, when are these movies set? Where are these movies set? Scanners 2 is is a kind of near future film up to a point. There is a very definite Blade Runner light aesthetic running through the first half of the movie. The opening skyscrape at night shot screams Blade Runner, and even includes the plumes of flames from a refinery that Ridley Scott used. There's a lot of smoky, shadowy interiors, backlighting through fans, and a score that sits somewhere between Vangelis' score for Blade Runner and softcore pornography. I guess in a nod to Cronenberg's aesthetic, Duguay finds a starkly designed retro future building to house the company that develops and manufactures this film's scanner drug. Something Cronenberg does a lot. He finds sort of a brutalist architecture, and that's your future. That's your sort of cold, impersonal future in these stark, straight lines. Duguay tries to do the same here. There's a weirdly incongruous silent disco, a sort of headphone disco, to make it look strangely futuristic scene, held at a bar that's positioned at the bottom of a set of escalators in what's clearly an empty mall that's supposed to look kinda, sorta futuristic. And then from that point onwards, Duguay seems to lose interest in that approach completely. And right after the escalator silent disco scene, there's no real attempt after that to pretend that the year is anything other than 1991, and it sort of settles back into a modern day feeling movie, which is a little odd after he's clearly got skill in, with very little budget, bringing a look and a feel to it, even if it's the look and feel ripped off from something else. David Cronenberg's Scanners benefited from having a really good baddie. A really, really good baddie. You don't really get better baddies than Michael Ironside in his full pomp. Scanners 2 has... If Scanners has a good baddie, Scanners 2 has a good bad baddie, if that makes sense. It's a baddie to cheer with some beers. He's called Drac. He is the mandatory evil scanner. He makes Michael Ironside's snarling and eye-rolling look like the kind of introspective work Marlon Brando was producing in On the Waterfront. He's part Wolfman in human form, part the son of Twin Peaks Killer Bob. He gurns like he's constantly coming up on the purest MDMA money can buy. He's got lines like, power doesn't make you good, power makes you powerful. He goes for it full pelt. It's absolutely ridiculous, but ridiculous in a kind of watch this movie with some friends and beers kind of way. At least he's doing something. At least it's interesting. I mean, it's wacky, it's crazy, but it's not a turn off. Horror fans will recognise the face of Tom Butler, who plays Dr. Morse in Scanners 2. He's the dad in Freddy vs. Jason. He's responsible for the new drug F2, which ostensibly treats the side effects of the scanner's ability, enabling them to keep using their powers, but it is also highly addictive, turning potential pawns in this megalomaniacal police commissioner's plan for a fascistic new world order into essentially pathetic dribbling junkies. Remember, kids, drugs are bad. What they need to affect their plans is a virgin scanner mind, unpolluted by drugs, bad drugs, naughty drugs, which is where David, the film's hero, comes into their schemes. How can David manage his symptoms more successfully than the other scanners? How can he do it whilst clean? The reveal to that plot, fans, is a crib straight out of the book of Star Wars Revelations, and I won't give it away, but you can probably guess it. The series expanded to a total of 5 films throughout the 90s, if you count the 2 supposedly spin-off Scanner Cop movies, and I do. There's absolutely no spin-off, schmin-off. They're Scanner movies. I can't think of a Canadian genre franchise that's beat five. There might be one by now. We've had a couple more decades to work on that. So someone please tell me. But as far as I'm aware, Scanners, if not the most prolific, certainly one of the most prolific Canadian genre franchises. And hardly anyone's seen these movies. If you're after some dumb 80s fun and have watched all your top shelf picks one too many times, this early 90s effort is enough of an 80s throwback to scratch that itch, absolutely. More action orientated, more explodey head orientated than the ponderous, intellectually driven movie that David Cronenberg presented us with. Flawed as it was a movie about ideas that happened to have an exploding head in it, rather than a film with an exploding head in it that happens to have some sort of remedial ideas somewhere in the background. Surely, with the same director working on Scanners 3 and filming both movies back to back, we're in for a 1-2 wham bam of good fun movies. That has to be a given, right? Right?